The Silver Lion's Secret. Subscribe to our channel if you dare to discover what hides behind the perfect life. Like this video to support more stories, and comment below what you would do in Adrian's situation. Adrian Vance's success was forged in gold. Few men could say they had built a multi-billion-dollar empire by the age of 40, but Adrian wore his triumph with a restless pride. People described him as magnetic, ambitious, and at times, ruthless. From his penthouse office in the iconic Europe Tower in Madrid, which bore the name of his own global investment conglomerate, Adrian believed the world was at his feet. Yet, as he looked out at the cityscape on a Wednesday afternoon, his heart felt strangely heavy. He frowned, rubbing his temples, and wondered why victory felt so hollow. On the surface, he had everything. A fortune that newspapers speculated ran into the billions, a beautiful wife named Isabella, and an endless stream of admirers. The tabloids had once dubbed him the Silver Lion of Spain, a nod to the premature graying that gave him an air of maturity and distinction. 40 floors below, the wind of early spring whipped through the streets, sending pedestrians hurrying to cafes or dashing back to their apartments. The pulse of the city was electric, a reflection of the persistent hum in Adrian's mind. He couldn't stop thinking about Isabella, his wife of 5 years, who had recently undergone a routine surgery. With his impossible schedule, he had barely managed to visit her in the hospital, and Isabella, in her gentle, selfless way, had insisted she was fine, urging him not to worry. Adrian wasn't a man who took orders easily, especially from those he loved. He was too used to orchestrating the world around him like a conductor leading a symphony. But things had changed between him and Isabella, where they once moved in unison, sharing laughter and planning a future full of philanthropic dreams. Now an unspoken distance hung over them. He closed his eyes, letting the day's anxieties fade. In that moment, a memory hit. The day he met Isabella at a charity gala in Barcelona. She was wearing a silk dress that shimmered under the chandeliers, a walking embodiment of elegance. He had been smitten with her immediately. Unlike the other social climbers in the room, Isabella spoke quietly about her passion for children's wellness programs. She barely recognized Adrian from the business magazines. Her genuine sincerity was why he had first fallen in love. And for a time, that sincerity had nurtured their marriage. She believed in him. She trusted him. In so many ways, she was his anchoring force. He should have felt whole. But a voice in his mind whispered that something was missing. Isabella was his wife, but their once electric bond had faded to a dull spark. He found himself walking the hallway of his own emotions, unsure which door to open, which direction to follow, and how to reconcile the yearning for more. "Mr. Vance?" a voice said behind him. His personal assistant, Mateo Lopez, a meticulously organized and soft-spoken man he had hired years ago, stood in the office doorway. "Yes, Mateo?" Adrian turned, quickly hiding the whirlwind of personal thoughts behind a careful expression. "I just wanted to remind you of tomorrow's board meeting at 9, and to let you know your car is ready," Mateo said. "Thank you," Adrian replied, his tone even, but his mind elsewhere. "I appreciate your diligence." As Mateo left, Adrian turned off the office lights. In the dark elevator, he tried to focus on business expansions, new projects, and the next big acquisition. But it all felt suffocating, an empty pursuit. When he arrived home, he found the penthouse eerily silent. Isabella had insisted on staying at the hospital overnight after her surgery to be monitored, the doctors said. The space, always immaculate, now felt too clinical. Adrian walked past the living room's panoramic windows, which offered a glittering night view of Retiro Park, to find the bedroom. He paused at the sight of their wedding photo on the dresser, Isabella smiling, Adrian looking straight at the camera with an arm around her. Where had that man gone? The man in the photo looked more carefree than the one standing in front of it. For reasons he couldn't articulate, Adrian felt the first stirrings of a dangerous curiosity, a desire for something new, something to rekindle the passion he once knew. He did not realize that this temptation would soon be met in the most unexpected and disastrous way. The next day, Adrian decided to visit Isabella at the hospital after his morning board meeting. The meeting ran long, with financial projections and an upcoming global expansion. Boredom mingled with anxiety as he wondered if Isabella had missed his presence the night before. Isabella was not one to ever complain, and her quiet acceptance often made him worry that she had learned to accept too much. When he finally arrived at La Paz University Hospital, he asked for her floor. The nurse directed him to the surgical recovery wing. His footsteps echoed in the pristine hallways, and he paused at the doorway to Isabella's room. Hearing the soft sound of voices, he stepped in quietly. Isabella was lying in the hospital bed, her face pale but serene. Standing beside her was a woman in a white coat with a clipboard in her hand. She had dark, wavy hair pulled back loosely and eyes that sparkled with intelligence. She was in the middle of giving instructions when Isabella caught sight of Adrian. "Adrian!" Isabella exclaimed, a fleeting smile lighting up her features. The woman in the white coat turned, a polite but distant smile on her lips. "You must be Mr. Vance," she said, extending a hand. "I'm Dr. Sofia Valdez. I was the one who performed your wife's operation." Adrian took her hand, noticing the firmness of her grip and the subtle confidence in her posture. "Pleased to meet you, doctor," he said, relieved to see Isabella safe. "How is she doing?" Dr. Valdez looked at Isabella. "Your wife is recovering well. We removed a small, benign tumor, as expected. We'll keep her for another day or two for observation, just to be safe. Then she can return home and rest." Isabella smiled reassuringly, though her voice was soft. "I'm fine, Adrian. Please, don't worry." But worry was exactly what gnawed at him. The thought of a cold hospital bed while he stewed in the quiet solitude of the penthouse unsettled him. "Is there anything I need to do?" he asked Dr. Valdez, wanting to exert some kind of control. "Just be there for her. Make sure she doesn't overexert herself once she's home," Dr. Valdez said, her gaze lingering on Adrian for a second longer than necessary. She turned her attention back to Isabella. "I'll be back later to check on you." With a final nod, Dr. Valdez excused herself, and the door closed softly behind her. Isabella exhaled as if in relief. Adrian moved closer and sat carefully on the edge of the bed, trying not to jolt her. "How are you, really?" he asked, reaching for her hand. She squeezed his palm gently. "Better now that you're here." "I'm sorry," he said. For once, the words of apology didn't feel forced. "I got so caught up in things that I neglected my husbandly duties." She brushed off his concern. "Your schedule is insane, and I'm used to it. Truly, don't stress about it." But her acceptance only heightened his guilt, and in that guilt, ironically, lived a spark of resentment. He almost wished she would demand more of him, so he wouldn't feel as if he were failing her by default. Moments later, a soft knock sounded on the door. Mateo walked in, carrying a bouquet of lilies. "I thought these might brighten your day, Mrs. Vance," he said, placing them on the nightstand. Isabella's face lit up with the flowers. "Thank you, Mateo. They're lovely." Mateo nodded in his reserved way before turning to Adrian. "You have a conference call in an hour, Mr. Vance. Will you be returning to the office?" Adrian, not wanting to leave Isabella's side, but with the demands of business calling, sighed. Standing up, Yes, I'll go, but I'll be back tonight, all right? She nodded. Of course. Go and conquer the world, Mr. Billionaire. Her gentle teasing made him smile, but as he leaned in to kiss her forehead, he found himself thinking of Dr. Valdez as she walked away. He had no reason to think about it, and yet, the fleeting spark he had felt unsettled him, a warning of precarious paths ahead. What Adrian couldn't have predicted was that a simple glance in a hospital room would become intertwined with his destiny. Dr. Sofia Valdez could have been a stranger, but fate had woven their paths together with subtle cunning. Ambition, longing, and secrets were about to converge, unraveling lives in their wake. What do you think of Isabella's calm acceptance? Is it a sign of trust, or something more concerning? The temptation. A week passed. Isabella was discharged from the hospital and returned home, to Adrian's relief. He made a sincere effort to schedule fewer late-night meetings and spend more time by her side. For a few days, it seemed life might return to a comfortable rhythm, but a restlessness still lurked inside him. One afternoon, while sorting through some documents at home, he noticed a business card on the living room table. Dr. Sofia Valdez, Surgical Oncology, with a contact number underneath. On the back, someone had scribbled a personal note. Call if you have any concerns. All the best, Sofia. Adrian wondered if the doctor gave all her patients' families such personalized service, or if this was a unique courtesy. Dismissing the thought, he tucked the card away. A few days later, at a charity gala for the hospital, Adrian attended with Isabella. It was her first public appearance since the operation. Held at the Prado Museum, the night featured a silent auction, with proceeds going to patient care programs. Isabella, in an elegant navy dress, looked radiant, though still a little fragile. He guided her gently through the entryway, greeting acquaintances and answering polite questions about her health. The event glittered with the city's elite philanthropists, corporate magnates, and socialites, all sipping champagne under the museum's high, vaulted ceilings. Midway through the night, while Isabella was chatting with a friend near an exhibit of Egyptian artifacts, Adrian excused himself to get them fresh drinks. As he made his way through the crowd, he nearly bumped into the doctor. "Oh, hello," she said, startled, regaining her composure. She wore a floor-length black dress, her hair styled in elegant waves. Gone was the white coat and professional reserve. In the soft glow of the museum lights, she looked radiant and surprisingly vulnerable. Adrian nodded politely. "Dr. Valdez, a pleasure to see you outside the hospital." She gave him a quick smile. "Just Sofia, please. At events like this, I try to leave the title behind." He returned her smile. "Then call me Adrian. But I have to say, you look much more at home at a surgical table than at a gala." Sofia laughed, a short but genuine sound. "I plead guilty. The hospital board insisted I attend to represent the department. How is Isabella?" "She's recovering well, thanks to you. In fact, she's here tonight, though taking it easy." Isabella was such a lovely patient. She paused, searching his face. "And you? You look tense. Something on your mind?" Her question was startling in its intimacy. Adrian cleared his throat, buying time. "I suppose I'm not used to slowing down," he replied. "Sometimes I forget how to rest without feeling guilty." Her eyes lit up with understanding. Doctors can relate. Work can be all-consuming. They fell into a conversation that felt unexpectedly natural. Adrian found himself intrigued by Sofia's stories about her medical residency, how she was inspired to become a surgeon after a childhood friend died of cancer. The honesty in her voice touched a place in him he hadn't felt in a long time. She, too, seemed to yearn for a real conversation, something deeper than the usual cocktail party chatter. At that moment, an announcement came over the loudspeaker system, asking for a moment of attention. The head of the charity introduced a special performance by the city's youth orchestra. Sophia gracefully excused herself, promising to see Isabella later. Adrian watched her go, the fleeting warmth of their conversation lingering in his mind. Later in the night, while Adrian was alone by a Roman statue, swirling a half-empty glass of champagne, Sophia approached him again. She held out a small white card, a different one from her hospital business card. "Here," she said, a nearly shy smile on her face. "I'm hosting a small charity event next weekend at my home to benefit a research initiative. It will be less formal than this, just some colleagues and supporters. We could use a donor like you, and Isabella, of course, if you're interested." Adrian took the card, glancing at the neatly written address in the Malasagna neighborhood. "I'm sure Isabella would love to support you. Thank you for the invitation." Sophia tilted her head. "I hope you can both make it. I'll email the details." "Adrian, thank you for caring about these causes. It really makes a difference." Their eyes met briefly. The quiet tension was as palpable as it was unnerving. Only the hush of the museum and the distant echo of violins saved him from prolonged self-consciousness. Then, with a fleeting nod, Sophia disappeared into the crowd. Adrian returned to Isabella, who was seated and chatting with an elderly philanthropist. She gave him a curious smile. "You were gone for a while?" she teased. He shrugged, revealing nothing. "I ran into your surgeon. She's invited us to a small charity event next weekend." Isabella's eyebrows rose. "How kind of her." He nodded, tucking the card into his jacket pocket. But an electric current in his veins told him that something more significant than a simple social invitation had just occurred. Fate has a subtle way of guiding footsteps, of forging connections in unexpected moments. Adrian told himself the invitation was innocent, and perhaps it was. But in the tapestry of events that would follow, this invitation would become the thread around which fates would intertwine. The Forbidden Flame. Adrian and Isabella arrived at Sophia's weekend charity event with a sense of curiosity. They had driven through the city in Isabella's chauffeured Bentley, leaving behind the polished skyscrapers for a stone townhouse on a quiet, tree-lined street. Sophia's house, though modest by a billionaire's standards, radiated warmth. The entryway was adorned with lanterns, and soft jazz spilled from within. Inside, they were greeted by a small crowd of medical professionals, a few donors, and Sophia's personal friends. The atmosphere was informal. People sipped wine, ate hors d'oeuvres, and mingled in intimate groups. Sophia, in a simple but sophisticated cream-colored dress, was in the entryway to welcome them. "Isabella, Adrian," she said, genuine delight animating her features. "I'm so glad you both came." Isabella gave her a gentle hug. "Thank you for inviting us. I feel like I owe you my gratitude for taking such good care of me." Sophia laughed, ushering them inside. "Nonsense. It was my job. But I appreciate you both being here." Isabella was soon introduced to some of the hospital board members, who immediately launched into a discussion of philanthropic initiatives. Adrian found himself momentarily adrift, floating toward the open kitchen to get a glass of wine. Sophia glided to his side. "I didn't think I'd see you here," she admitted in a low voice. "Why not? You invited us." He took a sip, meeting her gaze over the rim of his glass. She laughed, a light blush blooming on her cheeks. Charity events are not always a billionaire's idea of a fun Saturday night, especially not in a crowded stone townhouse. Adrian feigned a look of offense. "You're underestimating me now. Besides, I suspect you have an interesting crowd." She leaned her hip against the counter, looking out at the small gathering. "Most are researchers, young surgeons, or philanthropists who genuinely care about innovative treatments. Her gaze drifted to Isabella across the room, who was immersed in an animated conversation. "I appreciate you both taking an interest." Adrian nodded, trying to ignore the knot in his stomach. Being this close to Sophia in her personal space felt strangely intimate, and there was that intangible tension again, like a current passing between them. As more guests arrived, Sophia excused herself to greet them, and Adrian joined a conversation about investment strategies for medical technologies. An hour later, the crowd began to thin, leaving a more intimate group. Isabella, feeling a little tired, decided to head home early. She found Adrian leaning against a bookshelf near the back of the living room. "I think I'm going to call the car," Isabella said, discreetly stifling a yawn. "Of course," he replied, concern in his tone. "I'll finish up here in a few minutes and leave with you." She placed a reassuring hand on his chest. No, you stay. I can see these doctors are interested in what you have to say about funding. I'll be fine getting home. Just don't stay out too late, okay?" Adrian hesitated. The right thing to do was to accompany her, but the flicker in her eyes suggested she was genuinely okay with leaving him behind, not wanting him to cut short a potentially beneficial meeting. "All right," he conceded, giving her a gentle kiss on the forehead. "I'll see you at home soon." Isabella left, and Adrian walked her to the door, watching her get into the Bentley. A pang of guilt pricked his conscience. Isabella was so trusting, never for a second imagining that her husband might want or need anything beyond the confines of their marriage. Yet the small, dimly lit, and cozy living room seemed to pull him back inside. The conversation with the medical professional soon ran its course, and Adrian found himself alone by the fireplace. Sophia finally returned after seeing off some guests, noticing him there. "She left?" Sophia asked softly. He nodded. She was tired. Sophia poured herself a small glass of wine, then gestured to the sofa. "Care to sit down? I'd like your opinion on some potential donors." Adrian agreed, crossing the room to sink into the plush sofa. Sophia sat a polite distance away, her body leaning toward him. At first, they spoke strictly about philanthropic possibilities, corporate sponsorships, charitable alliances, the complexities of hospital politics. But as the hour passed, their conversation turned more personal. "What drives you, Adrian? You seem to have everything you could ever want." She admitted she felt the same way, swirling the red liquid in her glass. "My father was never around," Sophia said. "He left when I was 5. My mother worked 2 jobs, so it was mostly up to me to keep things in order. I think that's why I found refuge in education. If I studied hard enough, I could run my life." Adrian watched her as she spoke, compassion flooding him. "I can understand wanting to be in control," he said. "My father was a steel worker who barely made ends meet. I swore I'd never be dependent on anyone, that I would create my own path." A soft smile touched her lips. "And so you did." He opened his mouth to speak, but found himself momentarily speechless, realizing how easy it was to talk to her. He felt seen, in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. Their conversation drifted into more intimate territory. Dreams, regrets, the conflicts of balancing work with love. The air grew thick with something unsaid, a gravity that pulled them closer. Sophia set aside her half-finished wine and looked at the clock on the mantel. "It's past midnight," she observed, a small break in her voice. Adrian felt hesitation coil in his chest. He knew rationally that he should leave, get up, say goodnight, call his driver, and return home to his wife. But the moment felt suspended in time, steeped in possibility and danger. Sophia's eyes lingered on his lips before she looked away. She stood up, crossing to the other side of the room to turn off the lamp. In the dim glow of the fireplace, she turned back, looking at Adrian. She began, then fell silent, her heart pounding. Do you think Adrian is about to make the biggest mistake of his life? This the line, a voice in his head warned. Don't cross it. But with one slow, measured step, he stood up and moved toward her. When they finally stood face to face, the air between them trembling with unspoken desire, her lips parted as if she might speak or protest. But neither of them did. The mutual longing was too potent to be ignored. Adrian leaned in first, giving her a tentative kiss on the lips. Sophia responded, her hands sliding up his arms. The kiss deepened, feeding off of unspoken needs neither of them had admitted before. In that exchange of warmth, they unleashed a torrent of desires they had carefully repressed. Her scent, a subtle mix of jasmine and clinical antiseptic, and the softness of her skin against his, were seared into Adrian's memory. They broke apart, breathless, their eyes locked in the terror and excitement of having crossed an irreversible boundary. Sophia, She shook her head, placing a trembling finger to his lips. No. If we think about it too much, we'll regret it. He nodded, feeling the storm of conflict rage inside him. The man who had always sought control now found himself helpless against an emotion that felt both exhilarating and darkly forbidden. When he finally left her townhouse hours later, the sun was peeking over the horizon. In the back seat of his car, Adrian looked at the rosy sky, torn between guilt and a dizzying sense of aliveness. He had betrayed Isabella, yet he couldn't deny the truth of what he felt. A single thought pulsed through him like a litany. Nothing will ever be the same. Comment below what you would do if you were Adrian right now. What choices would you make? A web of lies. The morning came with a heavy silence as Adrian slipped into the penthouse. The faint dawn painted the living room in pale shades of gray. He tiptoed across the marble floors, hoping Isabella was still asleep. But as he approached the bedroom, he found her awake, propped up on a pile of pillows, her eyes filled with concern. Adrian, she asked in a low voice, were you out all night? He froze in the doorway, every muscle tense. I'm sorry, Isabella. The charity event ended late, and then he fumbled for an excuse. I got caught up talking business, and one of the doctors wanted more details about investment strategies. I lost track of time. She studied his face. Adrian wondered if she could sense the change in him, if the guilt radiated from his every pore. But Isabella's next words were soft with concern, not accusation. I wish you had called. I was worried. He nodded, offering a weak smile. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to worry you. She leaned back into the pillows, letting out a tired sigh. It's all right. Just let me know next time. Surprised by her unwavering trust, Adrian forced himself to walk over to the bed and kiss her forehead. I promise, he lied in a low voice. In the following days, Adrian tried to bury the memory of that night with Sophia, immersing himself in work. But the longing cast a persistent shadow. When he closed his eyes, he felt her lips on his, the warmth of her body, the magnetic pull of her presence. He told himself it was a one-time mistake. But fate rarely allows for such a neat conclusion. At first, it was texts disguised as updates on potential donors, then phone calls under the pretense of discussing hospital philanthropy. Their conversations inevitably veered into personal admissions and confessions. He discovered Sophia was just as tormented by what had happened. I can't stop thinking about you, she admitted one night, her voice a whisper over the phone. But I feel terrible. Isabella is such a lovely person. The mention of his wife's name made Adrian's heart pound with shame. I know, he murmured, We should probably end this before it even starts." A tense silence followed, but neither of them ended the call. Later that week, they met at a discreet cafe in the Salamanca neighborhood, sitting in a corner away from prying eyes. What began as an attempt to clarify boundaries soon led to an escalation of the very tension they had tried to contain. "I don't want to hurt her," Sophia said, stirring her café con leche mindlessly. "Or destroy your marriage." Adrian reached for her free hand under the table, running his thumb over her knuckles. "Me neither, but," he trailed off. The "but" encapsulated 1,000 unsaid words about how he felt seen in her presence, how her passion for life rekindled a spark he had lost, about the mismatch between the man he was expected to be and the man he feared he had become. A decision formed between them in that moment, a silent agreement to continue their pursuit in secret. The consequences be damned. Soon they were meeting in hidden corners of the city, a boutique hotel in Chueca, a rented studio apartment near her hospital, spontaneous weekend trips under the guise of business and medical conferences. Their affair was an unstoppable force, fueled by longing, guilt, excitement, and fear. Adrian noticed small cracks forming in his own composure. He became distracted in board meetings. Mateo, ever perceptive, occasionally looked at him with a quiet concern, as if sensing something was wrong. Isabella, for her part, attributed his distraction to the usual rigors of his corporate life. She rarely asked questions, and her unconditional trust became a silent knife twisting in his gut. Yet, as weeks turned into months, Adrian felt more alive. He and Sophia shared stolen moments that glowed with intensity, revealing glimpses of deeper emotional truths. She confided in him about being a woman in a male-dominated field, how she pushed herself to the limit to prove she was good enough. He told her of his fear that wealth and power had diluted his genuine self, that behind every business conquest lay an empty ache. Their bond deepened beyond mere physical attraction. They found solace in each other's vulnerabilities, forging a connection that felt terrifyingly real. And with that closeness, ironically, grew an undercurrent of tension. The sense that something, some unraveling secret, lurked just beyond their sight. One afternoon, as they lay entangled in crisp white sheets in his rented loft, Sophia brushed a lock of hair from his forehead and said, "Adrian, there's something you should know." He propped himself up on one elbow, his heart pounding at her serious tone. "What is it?" She opened her mouth to speak, then hesitated, her eyes uncertain. "It's nothing," she said finally, forcing a smile. "I'm just worried about how much longer we can keep this up." Adrian exhaled, half relieved. "We'll figure something out," he murmured, though he had no plan at all. But that intangible worry persisted, coiling in the back of his mind. The cost of the deception was mounting, and it was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. The collision Isabella's health had steadily improved, and she had thrown herself into her philanthropic interests in Andalusia. She often attended board meetings for a children's charity or visited hospitals to organize fundraising events. Adrian knew she was filling her days to avoid thinking about his growing absence. Each time she asked him to attend an event with her, he gave a reason why he couldn't. "You're not around much these days," she said one morning, standing in the open kitchen where she was brewing tea. "Is something going on at work?" Adrian, glancing down at his phone, felt a surge of panic. "Work has been intense," he lied. "I'm trying to close some big deals." She set the tea steeper down. Steam curled around her. "You know, if we don't make time for each other, we'll become strangers." His chest tightened, guilt lashing him. He forced a half smile. "You're right. I'll make it up to you." She nodded, though a flicker of doubt crossed her eyes. Okay, yet he didn't make any amends. The days melted into nights as Adrian and Sophia continued their clandestine meetings. Sophia felt the guilt, too. It showed in the resigned slump of her shoulders after their rendezvous. They agreed several times to end it. Yet each new conversation about a breakup ended in another desperate embrace. They were two moths circling a flame, helpless to break the cycle. One day, while scrolling through business emails in his office, a message from Sophia popped up. With a pounding heart, Adrian quickly typed a response, ignoring Mateo's discreet knock on the door. "Yes, at 7 p.m. at the usual spot," Sophia agreed, and he spent the rest of the day restless, his concentration fraying. That evening, Adrian arrived at the small Italian restaurant on Gran Via. They had grown accustomed to meeting there. The hostess, recognizing him, led him to an isolated table in a corner. Sophia arrived a short time later, her face tense. After some brief small talk, she set her menu aside. "I have to tell you something, Adrian." He felt the tremor in her voice. "Go ahead." She hesitated, scanning the room. Leaning forward, she lowered her voice to a whisper. "There's a rumor floating around the hospital about us." He stiffened, setting his fork down. "What do you mean?" "Some staff have noticed how often we're seen together. I tried to say it was strictly about hospital funding, but there have been raised eyebrows." She paused, her voice shaking slightly. "A nurse saw us once when you were visiting my office. We weren't doing anything, but we were obviously close." Adrian inhaled sharply. "Does Isabella know?" Sophia shook her head. "I don't think so. If she did, she would have confronted either you or me by now." He relaxed slightly, though his heart was still pounding. "We have to be more careful," he said, reaching out to take her hand. "Maybe we should slow things down." She pulled her hand away, sadness clouding her expression. "Slowing things down? That's not a solution. If we continue this, it's only a matter of time before she finds out. And if we end it, what do we do about these feelings?" He had no answer. The truth was, a part of him wanted to run away with her, to shed the responsibilities of his life and be free. Another part clung to his marriage, to the history and love he shared with Isabella. They finished dinner in a tense silence. Outside, it had started to rain. The street glistened under the streetlights. Sophia clutched her coat as they walked to her car. She turned to look at him, tears visible in the glare of the passing headlights. "What do you want, Adrian?" she asked, her voice cracking. He let out a ragged breath, brushing a rain-soaked curl from his forehead. "I don't know," he admitted, feeling more helpless than ever. They embraced in the downpour, a moment heartbreakingly beautiful in its desperation. Then they broke apart. Sophia walked away into the night, leaving Adrian stranded on the sidewalk, his soul tangled in impossible choices. For the first time, he felt the weight of impending doom, the sense that he was living on borrowed time. The darkness of the secret threatened to swallow him whole, and a silent question pulsed through his mind. If Isabella ever found out the truth, how would any of them survive the consequences? The baby and the lie. Isabella's birthday was approaching, and Adrian decided to throw an extravagant gala in the penthouse. The event was a mix of celebration and distraction. He believed that displaying his devotion in public might stifle any rumors that might reach Isabella's ears. If he showered her with attention in front of her friends and colleagues, perhaps she would remain oblivious to his betrayal. In the days leading up to the gala, Adrian spent a fortune on decorations, a private chef, and even commissioned a string quartet to play Isabella's favorite classical pieces. He also selected a rare Cartier diamond necklace, an ostentatious gift that felt like a poor attempt to buy her forgiveness in advance. The night of the gala arrived, and the penthouse buzzed with animated chatter. The city skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Waiters glided between guests, offering champagne and delicacies. Isabella, radiant in a crimson dress, seemed genuinely delighted. Her eyes shone with gratitude. "You've outdone yourself," she whispered to Adrian, leaning in to kiss his cheek. He smiled, though the gesture felt painful. A knot of guilt twisted in his stomach, and he prayed silently for the night to pass without incident. Among the guests, Sophia appeared in an elegant black dress that accentuated her slender figure. Adrian's pulse quickened at the sight of her. Their eyes met across the room, and the electric tension between them threatened to short-circuit his composure. Of course, she should not have come, but she was, after all, Isabella's surgeon. An invitation made sense on paper. Isabella noticed Sophia and smiled. "Dr. Valdez, I'm so glad you could make it." Sophia offered a polite smile. "Thank you for the invitation, and happy birthday." The conversation remained cordial, and to the untrained eye, everything seemed normal. But Adrian felt as if he were standing on a precipice. Sophia spoke to Isabella kindly, and Isabella responded with sincere gratitude, completely unaware of the undercurrent surrounding her. He wondered if Sophia felt as adrift as he did in that moment. As the night wore on, Sophia kept a respectful distance from Adrian. But occasionally, he felt her gaze brush him. Each glance ignited that familiar spark, a reminder of the raw passion they shared. It was both exhilarating and excruciating. Around 10 o'clock, Adrian stepped away from the party, going out onto the rooftop terrace to catch his breath. The air was cool, carrying the scent of rain. He stared out at the city lights, feeling an unbridgeable chasm opening inside him. Footsteps behind him, he turned to see Sophia, her shoulders tense. "I needed some air," she said in a low voice. He let out a shaky breath. "This is torture." She looked at him with sad eyes. "It has to end, Adrian. It's not fair to her. It's not fair to us." A whirlwind of arguments swirled in his head. The simplest solution, if he truly loved Sophia, would be to divorce Isabella. But the thought of shattering his marriage, of hurting Isabella so profoundly, made his chest tighten with fear. At the same time, he couldn't bear to lose Sophia, the only person who currently made him feel alive. He squeezed his eyes shut. "I'm caught in a trap of my own making," he admitted, his voice rough. Sophia's breath caught. She placed a trembling hand on his chest. "Then break free, Adrian. One way or another, you have to make a choice." She leaned in, her forehead gently touching his. The terrace lights illuminated the tear tracks on her cheeks. For one fleeting, painful second, they held each other, their hearts beating in a silent unison. The terrace door opened, and they broke apart abruptly. Isabella walked out, her expression one of mild confusion. "Are you two out here?" she asked. "Is everything all right?" Adrian's heart nearly hammered out of his chest. "Yes," he forced a laugh. "Sophia and I were just talking about a hospital charity event. She came out for some air, and so did I." Isabella's gaze moved between them, but she seemed to accept his explanation. "I'm going to get some fresh air too. The party is wonderful, but a little crowded." She turned to Sophia with a grateful smile. "Thanks again for coming. It means a lot." Sophia tilted her head. "Of course, I wouldn't have missed it." A gust of wind swept across the terrace, raising goosebumps on their arms. Isabella shivered, and Adrian draped his suit jacket over her shoulders. For a fleeting moment, the three of them stood there, the city lights twinkling below, the tension so thick it was almost tangible. Finally, Isabella broke the silence. "Shall we head back in?" Sophia nodded, murmuring something about getting home soon. With a forced normalcy, the trio walked back into the penthouse, back into the lavish warmth of the celebration. But Adrian couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Something irrevocable was coming, like a storm gathering on the horizon. And he was right. The tragedy that awaited them would be far more devastating than any of them could have ever imagined. A few days after the gala, Isabella had a routine follow-up appointment at the hospital. Adrian insisted on accompanying her this time, determined to reclaim some semblance of normalcy. The tension of the day came not from his usual work pressures, but from the knowledge that Sophia worked on the floors below, in the very same building. As Isabella was getting blood tests done, Adrian waited in the sterile hallway. The waiting hours felt endless, giving him too much time to dwell on his guilt. Finally, Isabella walked out, smiling but subdued. "All done," she said, her voice low. He stood up, taking her hand. "Everything okay?" She nodded, though her eyes darted away. "They'll call with the results in a few days." "Just routine?" He walked her to the car, trying to read the subtle shifts in her demeanor. "You seem quiet," he observed, as they slid into the back seat. She forced a reassuring smile. "Just tired, Adrian. Let's go home." The next day, while Adrian was in a board meeting, he received an unexpected text from Sophia. "We need to talk. Urgent." Unable to excuse himself immediately, he spent the rest of the meeting in a state of high anxiety. As soon as it was over, he rushed to his office and called her. She answered on the first ring. "What's going on?" he demanded, closing the door behind him. "I need to see you now," Sophia said, her voice laced with panic. "Can you come to the hospital?" He hesitated, feeling the walls close in on him. "That might look suspicious. Let me—" "Adrian!" she interrupted him. Her tone left no room for argument. "It's about Isabella." In a matter of minutes, he was in a car speeding toward La Paz University Hospital. He used a back entrance, the pulse in his neck hammering as he arrived at her office. Sophia was standing, her arms wrapped around herself, staring at a medical chart on her desk. "What is it?" he demanded, shutting the door behind him. She looked up, tears shining in her eyes. "I just reviewed Isabella's recent tests. Adrian, she's—" Her voice broke. He moved closer, his heart pounding. "She's what?" Sophia swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "She's pregnant." Time seemed to freeze. Adrian's mind reeled. "Pregnant," he repeated, as if the word were foreign. Sophia nodded, a tremor in her voice. "Early stages, but that's not all." Color drained from Adrian's face. His thoughts tripped over one another. "We haven't been intimate in months." The revelation hit him like a punch to the gut. "That's not possible," he whispered, his eyes searching hers for an explanation. She inhaled shakily. "I'm so sorry, Adrian. I know this is a lot to take in. But there's more. The blood work revealed, well, we suspected she might have a genetic predisposition to certain complications. I ran some extra panels and found something unusual." Her voice, hoarse with fear. "What do you mean, unusual?" he asked. Sophia hesitated, tears welling up in her eyes again. "I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but it appears that you and Isabella may not be biologically compatible for conception." He stared at her, not fully processing her words. "So you're saying the baby can't be mine?" Her silence confirmed it. His stomach twisted violently. Isabella was pregnant, but with another man's child. Anger surged through him, quickly replaced by confusion. Isabella had an affair? The very Isabella who had been so trusting. Guilt pricked him. He was the one cheating. How was this happening? He gripped the edge of the desk to steady himself. "Does she know?" Sophia shook her head. "She's not yet aware of the paternity issue. The initial test results only flagged anomalies. The deeper genetic test I ran—" "Why did you run that test?" he snapped, anger and shock colliding. Her eyes shone with hurt. "Because I'm her doctor, Adrian. I suspected something more was going on. I had no idea this would be the result." He ran a hand through his hair, breathing raggedly. "So you're sure the child isn't mine?" She nodded, tears now falling. "I'm so sorry." A thunderous silence fell. Adrian's mind raced, grappling with betrayal, hypocrisy, and heartbreak. And then another wave of fear washed over him. Who could the father be? He slammed his fist down on the desk. How could she do this? Isabella is so gentle, so kind. He cut himself off, feeling the sting of tears behind his eyes. Sophia moved toward him cautiously, placing a trembling hand on his shoulder. I can't imagine how painful this must be. He almost laughed at the bitter irony of their positions. Here he was, the cheating husband, now wounded by the possibility of his wife cheating too. Sophia hesitated, meeting his gaze. "If you want, I can help you talk to her. She needs to know about her condition and the child's father." "Well, that's a separate issue, but you will have to confront this." My mind spinning, a chaos of conflicting emotions, heartbreak, fury, guilt over his own affair, and the unsettling knowledge that life as he knew it had just collapsed. He looked into Sophia's eyes, searching for a sliver of comfort. But all he found was that shared sense of devastation. Both of them were caught in a cruel twist of fate. Two lovers who had betrayed Isabella, now discovering Isabella's own betrayal in the most heartless way. In that moment, Adrian wondered if any of them would survive this web of secrets and lies, a fatal twist. Adrian left the hospital in a daze, ignoring calls from the office and even a concerned text from Matteo. He needed to clear his head before speaking to Isabella. The thought of rushing home to confront her felt impossible. His emotions roiled like a storm in his chest. Finally, later that night, he found himself on the penthouse balcony, lights off. The city stretched out below in glittering patterns. Isabella was at a charity event, or so she had said. He half feared, half anticipated her return, replaying possible confrontations in his head. "Are you pregnant? Is it mine? Who is the father?" His hypocrisy gnawed at him. He had no right to feel indignant when he too had been unfaithful. Around 9 o'clock, the front door opened. Isabella called his name, and he turned from the balcony, walking inside. The living room was dark, lit only by the distant city lights. "Adrian!" she repeated, sounding worried. She flipped on a lamp. He just stood there, arms crossed, a grim expression on his face. "Sit down," he said in a low voice. "We need to talk." Anxiety crossed her features. "What's wrong? You're scaring me." He gestured for her to sit on the sofa. She complied, smoothing her dress with a nervous hand. Adrian sat across from her, resting his forearms on his knees. He couldn't tear his eyes from her face, a face he had loved, a face he had betrayed, but a face that might be hiding betrayals of its own. "Are you pregnant?" he asked, his voice barely audible. She inhaled sharply, her eyes wide with surprise. "How did you—" She stopped, swallowing. "Yes, I found out 2 days ago. I was planning on telling you tonight." His heart hammered. "Why 2 days ago? Why didn't you tell me immediately?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Because I was insecure. I still am. The doctor's offices have been running multiple tests. I wanted to be sure." He got up from the sofa, pacing the room. "Isabella, the tests say the baby isn't mine." She stood, trembling. "What? That's impossible, Adrian. How can you be so sure?" He turned to face her. "Your doctor told me. She found genetic anomalies that show we aren't compatible for conception. The baby isn't mine, so I ask you, tell me the truth. Who is the father?" Her cheeks flushed with confusion and indignation. "I have no idea what you're talking about. I haven't been with anyone else." Adrian's temper flared. You expect me to believe that? Tears spilled down her cheeks. Yes, because it's true, she cried, her voice breaking. I don't know what those tests say, or what the doctor told you, but I swear to you that I haven't been unfaithful. He stared at her, his heart pounding, his mind spinning. Was she telling the truth, or lying to protect her secret? Memories flashed through his head. Her late nights at charity, her new acquaintances, that look of sadness in her eyes. Could it have all been guilt? He softened, momentarily grappling with doubt. Isabella, your doctor, Sophia, told me this. Isabella stiffened. Dr. Valdez? A flash of pain crossed her face. Since when do you discuss my private medical information with her behind my back? He swallowed. The guilt intensified. She called me. She said it was urgent. Isabella shook her head. Her tears dried into an expression of betrayal. I trusted her. I can't believe she would tell you something so personal without speaking to me first. That's not ethical. And you? You've been checking up on me, Adrian? She looked him in the eye. You barely had time to visit me when I was in the hospital, but now you're prying into my medical records. He let out a ragged breath. The guilt swirled. I'm not checking up on you. This issue with the baby was a shock. She sat back down, covering her face with her hands. What's happening to us? Adrian sank back into the chair opposite her. Silence stretched between them. He felt as if he were standing on quicksand, unsure of anything. Isabella claimed she was faithful. Sophia's test results indicated otherwise. Could the tests be wrong? Finally, he spoke. Softer this time. Isabella, if you're sure you haven't been with anyone else, how do you explain the test results? She looked up with tear-filled eyes. I can't, but I have nothing to hide. There was a pause. Maybe we should get a paternity test, if that will give you the peace of mind you need. He considered it, his chest tight. All right, we will. She nodded, her voice trembling. Good. And if it proves you're the father, you'll know I never lied. But if the test proves you're not, her voice faltered, then I guess we'll have our answer. The exhaustion weighed on them. The conversation stalled at a tense impasse. Isabella stood up from the sofa, tears glinting in her eyes. I'm going to bed. I can't deal with this anymore tonight. Adrian rose, alarmed. What do you mean? You just found out we're having a baby. She looked at him with heartbreak in her eyes. Yes, we're having a baby, and we have to figure out how to move forward. But I can't do that in this atmosphere of distrust. You're accusing me of cheating. You're believing someone else over me. I can't pretend that's okay. His throat tightened. I was confused. The tests. Sophia showed them to me. Dr. Valdez was wrong, Isabella snapped, her tone laced with anger. She's the one who ran my tests, right? She told you the baby couldn't be yours. What kind of doctor does that without confirming? He couldn't defend Sophia. The mixture of his own guilt and her misinformation forged a wedge he might never be able to mend. I understand, he managed weakly. Isabella turned away, tears returning. Please, just pack some things and give me some space. Stunned, Adrian nodded. He retreated to the bedroom, grabbing a travel bag. His mind reeled with the magnitude of what he was losing. His wife, the woman he had loved deeply, despite the distance that had grown between them. They were now expecting a child, and yet the foundation of trust was shattered. He took one last look at Isabella, who was standing by the living room window, her back to him. A shudder ran through him, an overwhelming sense of regret, but the weight of his secrets pressed him down, and he left without a word. As he rode the elevator down, he felt the walls closing in on him. He had nowhere to go except the suffocating emptiness of a luxury hotel suite, or perhaps even back to Sophia. But this last option was tainted as well. He needed answers. Why had Sophia given him flawed information? Was it truly just a mistake, or was something darker at play? Adrian found refuge in a luxury suite at a 5-star hotel, ironically, one of the properties his company co-owned. Alone in the opulent space, he stared out at the city lights, reliving every conversation with Sophia. Her anguish at the hospital had seemed genuine, but how could she have made such a grave mistake? In the midst of his confusion, he received a call from Mateo Lopez, his longtime personal assistant. "Mr. Vance," Mateo said, his tone cautious. "I've noticed you've been off. I just wanted to see if you're all right." Adrian considered ignoring him, but something in Mateo's gentle concern prompted him to a confession. "I'm not all right, Mateo. My personal life is a mess." A long pause. Then Mateo spoke with careful resolution. "If you need anything or someone to talk to, I'm here. I've always admired your drive, but I've also worried it would become isolating." Adrian felt tears sting his eyes. He swallowed hard, maintaining his control. "Thank you, I appreciate it." He hung up, a dull ache in his chest. The next day, he mustered the courage to contact Sophia. She didn't answer. He tried several more times. Nothing. He finally decided to visit her at the hospital in person, despite the risk of causing a scandal. He arrived late in the afternoon, heading straight for her office, only to find the door locked. A nurse recognized him and told him Sophia had taken an indefinite leave of absence. The news stunned him. Desperate, he drove to her stone townhouse in Malasaña, his heart pounding. He knocked on the door. The rain was pouring, soaking his hair and his suit. After several tense moments, the door opened. Sophia was there, her eyes puffy, her hair a mess. She looked as though she had been crying for days. Without a word, she let him in. The living room was dark, with the lights off, the curtains drawn. "Why did you lie to me about Isabella?" he demanded, his voice thick with emotion. "You said I couldn't be the father. The paternity test proves otherwise." Sophia's jaw tightened, tears welling up. "It wasn't a lie. The initial genetic tests showed anomalies that indicated you and Isabella were incompatible. I had no reason to doubt those findings." He threw his hands up. "So you're telling me you just made a mistake? A careless lab error that almost destroyed my marriage, my family?" She swallowed, hugging herself. "I ran a deeper analysis after you left that day. I realized the genetic markers I found were incomplete. There was contamination in the sample. I tried to call you, but it was already too late. You were gone. And me?" She broke down, sobbing. He looked at her in disbelief. "Contamination? You ruined my marriage over a careless lab error?" He raised his tear-filled eyes to hers. "I never intended to ruin anything. When I told you I was so sure, I had no idea the sample was contaminated. When I realized, I was terrified. I knew how it would look, and I was afraid of losing everything." Adrian let out a ragged breath, remembering the passion and closeness they once shared. But now that felt tainted by deceit and misinformation. "You should have told me," he said in a low voice. "You should have told Isabella the truth right away." Sophia covered her face with her hands. "I know. I'm so sorry. But I was also afraid. Afraid of your reaction. Afraid of losing my reputation. I've seen how quickly doctors can fall from grace. I've worked my whole life to get here." He took a ragged breath, closing his eyes. "I don't know what to do. Isabella has kicked me out. She thinks I betrayed her, and I did, but not for the reasons she suspects." Sophia's tear-stained face lifted. "She doesn't know about us?" He shook his head. "No, and I don't see how telling her would help now. It would only destroy her." The silence weighed on the room. Finally, Sophia stood, approaching him with caution. "Adrian, I am so sorry. I never wanted any of this to happen." He sighed, closing his eyes. "Neither did I." Their gazes met in a moment of shared regret. They had once been consumed by passion, convinced that they had found something meaningful in one another. Now that love felt overshadowed by pain, he took a step back, tears stinging his eyes. I need to fix this with Isabella. We're having a child, and I can't let this affair or these lies destroy us. Sophia nodded, though hurt was reflected in her expression. I understand. Her voice was small, trembling. I just hope that someday you can forgive me. He paused at the door, raindrops dripping from his coat. I don't know if I can, he whispered. Then he left, feeling as if the walls of the stone townhouse were closing in behind him. Outside, the storm was raging, matching the confusion in his soul. He realized that even if he could fix things with Isabella, a part of him would always carry the weight of this affair. And no matter how much Sophia regretted her mistake, some betrayals left indelible scars. The final tragedy. Adrian returned to his lonely hotel suite and tormented himself over how to approach Isabella. Days passed with no contact. He learned through Matteo that Isabella had taken some time off from her charity work and was resting at a friend's house. The identity of the friend was never revealed, which left Adrian anxious and isolated. Finally, he received a text message from Isabella. Meet me at the penthouse tonight. We need to talk. A whirlwind of fear and hope coiled in his stomach. He left the office early, telling Matteo to clear his schedule. Arriving at the penthouse around 6, he found Isabella sitting at the dining room table, her hands clasped over a glass of water. She looked pale but resolute. Thank you for coming, she said, gesturing for him to sit. He sank into a chair, his heart in his throat. Of course. She took a breath, fixing her gaze on him. I received a call from Dr. Valdez. His stomach lurched. Sophia called you? She nodded. She confessed everything about the flawed test results, the contamination, and your affair. The words landed like a physical blow. Adrian froze, his heart pounding. She told you about us? Isabella nodded again, tears welling. Yes. She told me how you both began seeing each other after my surgery. She said she couldn't live with the guilt anymore. He slumped forward, shame and pain twisting his expression. I am so sorry, Isabella. I never meant to. She held up a trembling hand. Please, just let me talk. She took a breath, tears streaming down her cheeks. I believed in you, Adrian. Even when you doubted me, I forgave you because I thought you were stressed, misled. But this, you cheated on me with my own surgeon while I was ill. He wanted to speak, to defend himself, but no words would come. He bowed his head, accepting her condemnation. She continued, her voice trembling. I'm pregnant with our child, and the father was with another woman. I can't even process it. Dr. Valdez told me she's ended things with you, but the damage is already done. Tears welled in his own eyes. Isabella, I'm sorry. It started as a mistake, and I felt lost. I'm not making excuses. I just want you to know I never stopped loving you. I don't know, looking for something I thought I was missing. I realize now that it was always here. Her laugh was bitter, derisive. Is that supposed to make this easier? She pressed a hand over her stomach, where their baby was growing. You betrayed me, Adrian. You humiliated me. I don't know if I can ever forgive you. He reached out, wanting to comfort her, but she recoiled. Don't, she warned, her voice raw. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of her quiet sobs. Finally, she spoke again. I'm going to my mother's house in Seville. I need to get away from this city, from the whispers, from the memories. Panic washed over him. Isabella, please, let's go to therapy. Let's try to fix this. We owe it to our baby. An expression of pain crossed her face. I can't think about that now. I'm too hurt. Maybe, with time, we'll see. But for now, I need space. His world was crumbling. He understood he deserved these consequences for his actions. Still, the pain was staggering. Isabella stood up, her decision final. I'm leaving tomorrow. Matteo will handle my flight arrangements. I hope that someday we can be parents in a healthy way. But right now, I can't be around you. She walked toward the door, stopping once. Without turning, she whispered, I loved you, Adrian. I trusted you. Do you remember? Then she was gone. The penthouse felt emptier than ever. Adrian sank to his knees, a choked sob tearing through his throat. He had gained power, prestige, and untold wealth, but he had lost the one thing that mattered, the trust and love of the woman who had believed in him. Now, as the evening settled, he realized the tragedy of his choices. He had not only betrayed Isabella, he had betrayed himself. And in the flickering shadows, he felt that no matter what happened next, the innocence of their love was lost forever. In the weeks following Isabella's departure to Seville, Adrian sank into an existence of empty routine. He kept up appearances at work, but his colleagues noticed the abrupt change in his demeanor. Once a commanding presence in the boardroom, he now seemed distant, distracted. He signed deals and attended meetings mechanically, as if on autopilot. By night, the penthouse became a ghost chamber. Every corner reminded him of Isabella, her laughter, her soft presence, her philanthropic zeal. The knowledge that she was carrying his child far from him only compounded his agony. He drank until he fell into a restless sleep, tormented by nightmares of losing everything he once cared about. Sofia Valdez also disappeared from his life. He learned through mutual contacts that she had resigned from the hospital. The rumors said she was taking a position in another city, perhaps out of the country. A part of him wanted to track her down, to demand an explanation for her final confession to Isabella. But a deeper part of him knew he had no right. His affair with her had set the stage for this catastrophe. Mateo Lopez, ever the loyal assistant, tried to offer help. One afternoon, he found Adrian slumped at his office desk, long after closing time. Mr. Vance, Mateo said softly, you can't go on like this. Adrian looked up, his eyes bleary with exhaustion. You're right. I can't. Mateo paused, then asked carefully, have you spoken to Isabella recently, or considered going to Seville to see her? Adrian shook his head. She won't return my calls. I send texts and emails, but she rarely responds. When she does, it's only about practical matters like medical updates or legal details. He sighed, rubbing his temples. I want to be there for my child, but she's shutting me out, and I can't blame her. Mateo nodded solemnly. Perhaps you should step away from work for a while. Take some time to get your thoughts in order. The board can manage in your absence. The suggestion brought a flicker of both relief and fear. Adrian was used to burying himself in work to escape emotional pain, but now the pain eclipsed everything, refusing to be ignored. I might do that, he said in a low voice. That night, Adrian made a decision. He would fly to Seville, unannounced, and try to talk to Isabella face to face. Perhaps if she saw his sincerity, she would give him a chance to show that he could change. He packed a small suitcase and booked a first-class ticket on a red-eye flight. As he buckled himself into his seat, anxiety swirled in his stomach. He didn't know if his uninvited arrival would push Isabella even further away, but he had to try something. He couldn't bear the thought of missing the birth of his child or losing any last hope of reconciliation. On the plane, memories of better times assailed him. He remembered how Isabella once teased him about his incessant need for control, how they would laugh about his detailed travel itineraries. Now he had no plan, just desperation. Landing in Seville at dawn, he took a car to the address Isabella's mother had given Matteo months prior. The coastline gleamed in the morning sun, mocking his confusion with its serene beauty. His heart pounded as he pulled up to the modest suburban home, a world away from the luxury of the penthouse. He knocked on the door. After a tense moment, the door opened, revealing Isabella's mother, Emilia. She looked at him with a strained expression. "Adrian, I didn't know you were coming." He forced a polite smile. "I'm sorry for the intrusion. Is Isabella here?" Emilia's gaze held a mother's fierce protectiveness. "She's resting. The pregnancy has been hard on her, especially with all the stress." He sighed, guilt once again gnawing at him. "I just want to see her. Talk to her. Please." Her mother studied him for a long moment. Then she stepped aside. "I'll see if she's willing. Wait here." He walked inside, taking in the cozy interior, family photos, warm lighting, the smell of fresh coffee. It was a world away from his sterile existence in Madrid. After a few minutes, Emilia returned, her face resigned. "She'll see you on the back porch," Emilia said in a low voice. "Please, try not to upset her." He nodded, walking through the house to the back patio porch. There, he found Isabella sitting in a wicker chair, her hands clasped over her slightly swelling belly. Even in her casual maternity clothes, she looked regal, though heartbreak still lingered in her eyes. "Thank you for seeing me," he said, his throat tight. She looked at him with a mixture of pain and resolve. "You shouldn't have come here unannounced." "I know," he admitted, taking a seat a few feet away, "but I had to." They sat in silence, the sound of seagulls echoing in the distance. Finally, he spoke, his voice trembling with emotion. "I'm sorry, Isabella. I've said it before, but I'll say it 1,000 times if I have to. I messed up. I hurt you in the worst way. But I'm here because I want to be a part of your life, a part of our child's life." She looked down, rubbing her belly absently. "You think just by showing up, I'll forgive you?" He shook his head, tears stinging his eyes. "No, I know forgiveness isn't that simple, but I will do anything to prove that I can change." A tear rolled down her cheek. "You broke my trust, Adrian, and right now, the only person I can focus on is this baby." She paused, her voice trembling. "I'm not saying you can't be involved, but I don't know if I can ever be your wife again." The finality in her words cut him. Yet, beneath the pain, he felt a glimmer of relief that she hadn't completely shut him out of the baby's life. He reached out cautiously. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to her belly. She hesitated. Conflict crossed her face. Then she nodded slowly. As he gently placed a hand on her abdomen, a wave of emotion nearly overwhelmed him. This was his child, an innocent life, untouched by the betrayals of the past. Isabella covered his hand with her own briefly. "The baby is healthy according to all the tests," she whispered. "I won't keep you from your child, Adrian, but please, just give me time." Tears rolled down his cheeks. "Thank you," he managed. They sat in the moment, a fragile truce between them. Outside, the sun climbed higher, illuminating the horizon. Adrian knew their story might not have a happy ending, but at least there was a glimmer of hope for a future in which he could be a father. He would return to Madrid that night, leaving her with the space she needed. But his heart remained anchored to that porch, where he first touched the fragile miracle he had almost lost, even before it arrived. In the following months, Adrian made concerted efforts to be present in Isabella's life, though from a respectful distance. He sent her financial support and check-in messages, and occasionally flew to Seville for prenatal milestones, always staying in a nearby hotel, never presuming to stay with Isabella's family. Their conversations remained polite, cautious, but at least they were talking. Then came the 8th month of pregnancy. Isabella's due date was fast approaching, and Adrian planned to stay in Seville for a prolonged time, determined to be there when their child entered the world. Despite her emotional walls, Isabella had tentatively agreed to have him nearby at the hospital. Fate, however, had a cruel twist in store. One night, Adrian was in his Seville hotel suite when he received a frantic call from Amelia. "Adrian, come quickly! Isabella is in trouble." His heart raced. "What do you mean?" "She collapsed. We've called an ambulance. They're rushing her to the hospital. Hurry." The line went silent. Adrian's heart hammered as he ran out of the hotel, not even bothering to grab his suitcase. When he arrived at the hospital, he found Amelia crying, pacing the waiting room. She was having pains, Amelia explained, her voice shaking. She thought it was early labor, but then she collapsed. A doctor appeared, his face grim. "Mrs. Vance is in surgery. There's a complication, a placental abruption. We are doing everything we can." Adrian felt the blood drain from his face. A premature separation of the placenta could be life-threatening. "Can I see her?" The doctor shook his head. "Not right now. We'll keep you updated." Time passed in an agonizing blur. Amelia clung to him, sobbing, while he sat rigidly, his breath catching. Memories of Isabella's laughter, her tears, her gentle spirit, it all flashed through his mind. He whispered silent prayers, promising he would do anything, sacrifice anything, if only she would be saved. Finally, a nurse came out. "Mr. Vance, the baby is in distress. We need your permission for an emergency C-section." He stood on trembling legs. "Do it. Save them. Do whatever it takes." The nurse rushed back into the operating room. Minutes turned into hours, each second an eternity. Finally, the doctor returned, his surgical scrub stained, exhaustion etched onto his face. "We delivered a baby boy," he said, his voice flat. "He's in the neonatal intensive care unit, fighting for his life." As for Mrs. Vance, he trailed off, his eyes heavy with sorrow. "She lost too much blood. We tried everything, but I'm so sorry." Adrian's world shattered. A ringing filled his ears. "No!" he gasped, staggering backward. "That can't be! She can't be gone!" Amelia's wail of grief echoed in the hallway. The doctor's expression wavered, unable to offer comfort. "I'm sorry," he repeated, his voice fading into a blur of meaningless words. Adrian sank to the floor, collapsing under the weight of the news. Isabella was gone. His kind, beautiful, forgiving wife. The woman who once radiated warmth and kindness, who was carrying his child, despite the pain he had caused. He cried out, tears streaming in a torrent of desperation. Nothing in his life, no wealth or business empire, had prepared him for this level of loss. In that moment, he would have traded every dollar, every success, just to save her. But it was too late. Adrian's son survived the ordeal, though he was born prematurely and faced an uphill battle in the neonatal intensive care unit. In the aftermath of Isabella's death, Adrian poured every ounce of his being into the child. Each day he sat by the incubator, whispering apologies and lullabies, praying for this fragile life to endure. Newspapers and tabloids turned the tragedy into a sensational story. Billionaire's wife dies in childbirth. They gossiped about alleged affairs, whispered about possible malpractice, but none of it mattered to Adrian. His only concern was the tiny baby, who embodied both his greatest joy and his deepest regret. Sofia Valdez reached out once, sending a condolence letter. But Adrian never responded. He couldn't bear another reminder of his downfall, nor could he entirely blame her. He knew the true fault lay in his own choices. Mateo Lopez remained by his side, handling everything, while Adrian grieved. "Focus on your son," Mateo would say, taking up the burden of business matters. Adrian was grateful for the loyalty of a friend who never judged, only supported. Finally, after weeks of delicate care, Adrian's son grew stronger. The doctors declared he was fit enough to leave the hospital. Adrian named him Nicholas, a nod to Isabella, the mother he would never know. The day he took Nicholas home, Adrian stood outside the hospital, holding the car seat with trembling arms. The sun warmed them both, a small mercy from the universe. Nicholas's tiny fingers curled and uncurled, grasping at the air. Adrian leaned down, pressing a tender kiss to his son's forehead. "I promise," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I will honor your mother by being the best father I can be. I may have failed her, but I won't fail you." Tears rolled down his cheeks as he placed Nicholas gently into the waiting car. And in that vow, Adrian discovered the slightest glimmer of redemption. He had lost the love of his life, but he had been given a chance to protect the innocent life they created together. For the first time in months, he felt a small but resolute spark of hope. He would forge a path forward, fueled by a commitment to live an honest, authentic life for his son. Ambition and greed had once ruled him, but now only love tempered by tragedy guided his heart. What are your thoughts on this tragic ending? What do you think Adrian's life will be like now?